Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are doing a complete walkthrough of ICP-MS instrumentation, that's inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometry. This is one of the most powerful analytical technique for detecting trace elements at parts per trillion levels. Now you might be looking at this machine and thinking it's just a big black box. But inside, there's an incredible journey happening. Your sample goes through 10 critical steps before you get your results. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how your sample travels from a liquid in a vial to quantitative elemental data on your screen. So let's dive in and follow this journey step by step. Before we even get to the ICP-MS, we need to talk about the sample preparation. Because garbage in means garbage out. Most samples start in Teflon digestion vessels. Why Teflon? Because these vessels can withstand temperature up to 300 degrees Celsius. Here's what happens. We add strong acids to your sample and heat it up. The high temperature and acids work together to completely remove all organic matter. Think proteins, fats, carbohydrates, everything organic burns away and dissolves. So what's left behind? Only the inorganic elements, the metals and minerals we want to measure. This is crucial because ICP-MS can only analyze inorganic elements. After digestion, you have a clear acid solution containing your elements of interest. This gets diluted to the appropriate concentration and now we are ready to introduce it to the ICP-MS. Now let's come to the first part of your instrumentation, that is the autosampler. Your prepared sample sits in the 50 ml Tarsen tube which is placed onto the autosampler tray. The autosampler is essentially a robotic arm that moves from vial to vial. One critical requirement here, you need a minimum of 2 mm of sample. Why? Because the probe needs enough liquid to aspirate without introducing air bubbles. The autosampler probe dips into your sample and begins drawing it up, but it doesn't do this alone. Coming to steps 2, that is your peristaltic pump. This is the heart of your sample introduction system. The peristaltic pump runs continuously during analysis, creating constant steady pressure. Think of it like a heart pumping blood through veins. Now here's where it gets interesting. There's a color-coded tubing system and you must know what each color does. White tubing, this is your sample line. It carries the sample from the autosampler. Red-orange tubing, this is your internal standard line. Internal standards are crucial for correcting any variation in the instrument during your run. Blue tubing is your drainage line. After the sample goes to the spray chamber, waste needs to go somewhere. You also have a tubing for auxiliary gas and makeup gas. These help with aerosol formation and plasma stability. Why does this matter? Mix up these tubes and you could be pumping your expensive internal standard to waste. The consistent pumping action ensures reproducible flow rates, which means reproducible results. Now coming to the third and fourth part, that is your aerosol generation. Your liquid sample now meets the nebulizer. This is where the magic of transformation begins. High pressure argon gas flows to the nebulizer, creating a Venturi effect that breaks your liquid sample into tiny droplets. We are talking about creating an aerosol mist similar to spray bottle does, but much finer. Now you have two choices of nebulizers. Glass nebulizers, these are cheap upfront but they are delicate. Drop one and you're buying another. They have a shorter shelf life and are more prone to clogging. While quartz nebulizers, they are more expensive initially but they last much longer. They are more durable and better for routine, high throughput work, especially if you're working with corrosive samples. My recommendation? If you're running samples daily, invest in quartz. If it's occasional use or a teaching lab, glass might be fine. Now let's come to the next step, that is plasma generation and ionization. Now we are entering the most spectacular part of the ICP-MS, the plasma torch. The torch consists of 3 concentric quartz tubes, an inner tube, a middle tube and an outer tube. Quartz is used because it can withstand the extreme temperature we are about to create. Your sample aerosol flows through the innermost tube. Argon gas flows through the outer tubes, but here's the question. How do we turn this into a plasma? So here comes the RF load coil. Wrapped around the outside of the quartz torch is a copper coil called the RF load coil. RF stands for radio frequency. This coil generates a powerful oscillating electromagnetic field. When we introduce argon gas and provide a spark, the electromagnetic field strips electrons from argon atoms, creating argon ions. These ions are accelerated by the field, colliding with more argon atoms, creating more ions, and boom, you have a self-sustaining argon plasma reaching temperature of 6000 to 8000 degrees Celsius. For perspective, that's hotter than the surface of the sun. Now coming to the next step, that is the ionization zone. So what happens to your sample in this inferno? First, the aerosol droplets completely evaporate, that is liquid to gas. Second, the heat breaks apart all molecules into individual atoms. Third, and most importantly, these atoms get ionized. They lose an electron and become positively charged ions. This is critical because the mass spectrometer can only work with charged particles. Your samples has now been transformed from a liquid in a vial to a beam of positively charged ions. Time to separate them. Coming to your next part, that is interface and mass analyzer. Let's talk about the interface cones. We have a challenge. The plasma operates at atmospheric pressure, but the mass analyzer needs high vacuum to work. How do we bridge this gap? Two nickel cones do this job. The sampler cone, this is the first cone, about 2 to 3 centimeters in size, with a tiny orifice of about 1 millimeter. It faces the plasma directly and takes the brunt of 8,000 degrees Celsius heat. It samples the central core of the ion beam. Coming to the next cone, that is the skimmer cone. Positioned right behind the sampler, this cone further refines and focuses the ion beam. Between and beyond these cones, we create a pressure gradient. Atmospheric pressure at plasma 760 torr, medium vacuum between cones, high vacuum after the skimmer, that is 10 to the minus 6 torr. This rapid pressure drop accelerates your ions and focuses them into a tight beam headed for the mass analyzer. Both cones are made up of nickel for durability, but they do degrade over time and need replacement. Coming to the next part, that is your quadrupole mass analyzer. Now we are inside the sealed high vacuum section of the instrument that you can't see. The quadrupole consists of 4 precisely aligned metal rods arranged in a square pattern. These rods have both DC and AC voltages applied to them. Here's how it works. As ion travels down the center of these 4 rods, the electromagnetic field filters them based on your mass to charge ratio. Only ions with selected mass to charge maintain a stable trajectory and make it through. All other ions get deflected and lost. The brilliant part? The quadrupole can scan rapidly, switching between different masses in milliseconds. That is why ICP-MS can measure 70 or more elements in a single run. Now coming to your last part, that is detection and data. Finally, your ions reach the detector, and this is where we convert individual ions into electrical signal. The electron multiplier works like an amplifier. When a single ion strikes the detector surface, it releases several electrons. Those electrons hit another surface, releasing even more electrons. This creates a cascade effect. One single ion can produce millions of electrons. This massive amplification is how ICP-MS can detect elements at parts per trillion levels. The detector counts every ion that arrives and converts this into an electrical pulse. The computer records when each ion arrived at that mass. After scanning through all your target masses thousands of times, the software integrates these counts, compares them to your calibration standard, and calculates the concentration of each element in your original sample. Now, standard ICP-MS has one limitation. It tells you the total amount of an element, but can't distinguish between different chemical forms. Why does this matter? Let's take mercury as an example. Total mercury might be hundreds parts per billion in your fish sample. But here's the critical question. Is that inorganic mercury or methyl mercury? Methyl mercury is an organic form that bioaccumulates in the food chain and causes neurological damage. It's far more toxic than inorganic mercury. Now, regular ICP-MS can't tell them apart. So the solution is connecting the HPLC to your ICP-MS. HPLC separates different chemical species based on their properties like sorting mail before delivery. Methyl mercury elutes at one time, inorganic mercury at another. Then each separated species flow into the ICP-MS going through the exact same process we learned, that is nebulizer, spray chamber, torch, cones, quadrupole and the detector. But now you get separate peaks and separate measurements for each mercury species. So there you have it, the complete journey. Autosampler, peristaltic pump, nebulizer, spray chamber, quartz torch, RF coil, sampler cone, skimmer cone, quadrupole, electron multiplier, and last, your data. 10 steps that transform liquid samples into quantitative elemental analysis at parts per trillion sensitivity. If this helped you understand ICP-MS better, hit that like button, Drop any question in the comments below and subscribe for more analytical content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.